Okay, we're live. Good. Hello, everybody. Not that there's anybody here yet. Hi. Hello. I'm going to start waving at people. Thanks for joining. I'm not a big fan of the first couple of seconds of any live video where you're just kind of staring at yourself and nobody's here. It's always a bit weird. Hi. Hello. Hi, Liza. Liza, are you Liza or Lisa? Because I feel like I might get it wrong every time I say it. And I want to get it right. Hello, Louise. Oh no, Louise is here. Hi, Louise. Nice to see you. I hope you've all got a drink. I have got a hot chocolate that I have velvetized in my velvetizer. It is a white chocolate hot chocolate, which is interesting. I will say that. It's like drinking melted down Milky Bar buttons. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm on the fence. I'm just waving at everybody. Thanks for joining. Just wait for a few more people to join. We're talking niche fragrances this evening. I am Thomas. I am the essential fragrance expert. So when it comes to niche fragrance, I am the man to do the talking. And that's what I'm going to do. Hi, Stephen. Hello. Thanks for joining. Hello. I'm just going to wave at everybody that joins. No, don't submerge the velvetizer in water. Yes, no, it is not to be submersed. Just to be cleaned gently with a cloth. Okay, cool, got it. Brilliant. Lisa it is then. Good, I've got it right. I will remember that. Hi, everybody. I'm very lucky because I'm going to be joined by two guests this evening, a bit later on, to talk about niche fragrances, which I'm kind of excited about. So we will wait for them to join a little bit later. If you want to ask a question, then absolutely please do. And then we'll try and get to those as we go or do them at the end, whichever way works best. But any questions about niche fragrances or fragrances in general, we are more than happy to answer. Hi, everybody. I was just saying, if you're just joining, if you don't know who I am, my name is Thomas. I am the fragrance expert here at Essential. I also go by the name of the Candy Perfume Boy, which you can find me on Instagram if you want to follow me. And we are talking niche fragrances today, which is very exciting because niche is something that's really important to us here at Essential because we love fragrance and we also love niche fragrance. So it's going to be great. Can you get free ones from me? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have the authority to give away freebies. Karen and Chelsea might when they join. We are actually doing a bit of a giveaway. If you notice, we had some a competition to win 10 niche fragrances based on the questions that people were asking throughout the day. So just stay tuned. If you've asked a question, you might get a prize. Submitted my question 10 minutes ago. Am I too late for the draw? I think you may be, yes. But I'm not 100% sure. You just started getting into them after the Essentials boxes. Yeah, we're having so much fun with the Essential Scents boxes. If you don't know about those, I'm just going to plug them just before we get started. I'm waiting a few minutes for everyone to join. So with the Essential Scents boxes, that's where we do a monthly trial box where you get 8 samples with no name on them. You don't know what they are, what brand they come from, what the fragrance is. And we kind of chat about them in our Facebook group and we do live reveals and it's a good way to explore new things. So we're doing those and we have our next one, which is Floral, which is going live for March. So that's exciting. So that's just on there. That's on the blog now, on the blog and on the website. So, does everybody know what niche fragrance is? That's going to be my first question. Does anyone know what niche fragrance is? Does anyone have any niche fragrances? Does anybody love any niche fragrances? Let's talk niche, because I'm excited to do that before we kick off. This is great. I'm loving all of the Essential Scents love that you think it's great. And that's what we wanted to do. Essential Scents came from the fact that lockdown is making stuff really difficult in terms of trying fragrance because we can't go anywhere to smell fragrance. And even when the shops were open, there weren't testers around because obviously of the transmission of COVID, etc. It's not really sensible to have loads of people touching the same thing. So we wanted to kind of bring fragrances to people for them to try, but also we're doing it blind because it allows you to kind of discover things that you wouldn't necessarily look at. Because sometimes the brand or the price or the the notes or the description can be a barrier, and this way you're just trying it to see if you like it. Would I consider Tom Ford a designer or niche? Well, that's a good point, and we'll come on to that as we go. I would say that it's kind of mainstream niche because it's very accessible with Tom Ford, but the price point does, I suppose, make it a little bit less accessible than most stuff. If we're talking about the private blends, because they're about £150, I think. Hi, everybody. Hi, Joel. I think I saw George somewhere. Hi, George. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry if you've escaped my notice. There's Karen's there. Hi, Karen. Good evening. I'm drinking my hot chocolate. I've got the white chocolate one. It's like drinking a Milky Bar. It's quite interesting. We're going to come on to what is niche. It's a really good question. Is Miller Harris niche? I'm going to answer that question as we go. It's great that we've already got lots and lots of questions. Hi, Jade. I'm just going to jump into it. Oh, we've got Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Melissa. Hi, everybody. This is great. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about niche fragrances. So pull up a chair, get yourself a drink, get comfy. We're going to talk fragrances. Really excited to talk to you about niche. What I will say is I really want to answer your questions as we go. So please do ask questions. I will try and get to them as I go and scroll back up if I've missed anything. And there is also no such thing as a stupid question. If you have a question, please just ask it. Someone else is probably thinking the very same thing. So please don't worry about that. You often wonder, what is it niche or have I just not heard of it? Well, I mean, that's a good question, actually, because sometimes, you know, if we haven't spent too much time looking at mainstream fragrances, it can all feel a bit niche. Fragrance in itself is quite niche. Anyway, you love the giant alien in the background. Yes, I love my alien. We call it the mothership because it is so large. It's a giant 1 litre bottle of alien. And so if I ever drop it, I will have to move planets because I will never get the smell out of the carpet, I don't think. Okay, so we'll be talking about niche fragrances. I'm going to be joined later by Maria from Greek Goddess London and Sophie from Soki London to talk about their favourite niche fragrances and their experience with niche. So I'm really excited about that. Keep your questions coming as we go. We've been running a competition throughout the day, so winners will be announced on the live a bit later at the end. Spoiler alert, it will be at the end. And there's also a really fun article on the blog where we've asked seven bloggers and fragrance lovers to talk about their favourite niche scent as well. So that's live on the blog. Links, etc. are everywhere. Imagine dropping it. I know, I can't even fathom dropping the mothership. I don't know what I would do. I think I would immediately dissolve because Alien's quite strong. So I think I would just dissolve. That would be it. You'd never hear from me again. I'd become like, I don't know, I know it's like Spider-Man, isn't it? You would just, you know, infected by radioactive, etc., etc. So I would just become Muglarian. Anyway, that's me rambling. You love all my fragrances in the background. Thank you very much. Here you go. Give you a little sneak peek. Took me a very, very long time to organise that and even longer to dust them, which is actually not really that sensible. Okay, so let's talk niche. Let's jump in. Niche brands are really important to us. That's the first thing that I want to say. We've always wanted to champion unique, beautiful brands at Essential and brands that offer something different from the mainstream. And we love good fragrance and we want to bring a wide variety to people. So we have amazing kind of collection of fragrance brands on the website. And we also, as part of that, as well as having all of your go-tos, your Dior's and your Givenchy and your Mugler and, you know, the list goes on, we make it a real point to source those brands that we think are kind of off the beaten track, because then we can then bring them to you and make them more accessible and you can try them and enjoy them and etc. So that's something that we've always really done. So we have a vast array of niche brands, which we will come on to as we go. What time is it in England? It is 4 minutes past 8 in the evening. So let's talk about what niche actually is, because I think it's a bit of a muddled term. So it's quite complicated in the sense that I think what niche meant when niche first existed and what niche means now are two very, very different things. It has evolved massively. So niche started out as artisanal, hard to find fragrances, and they were made for smaller audiences. And whether something was defined as niche was dependent on the number of doors that it was available. When we say number of doors, that just means essentially the point of sale. So how many places could you actually go and buy that fragrance or that brand? So if you could only buy something from its boutique in one store, in one place, then that is very niche. it's actually really evolved since then, as I've said, and actually niche is becoming much more mainstream, which is kind of a little bit of a kind of an oxymoron in a way. But one of the first niche brands was a brand that was called L'Artisan Parfumeur. I don't know if anyone knows L'Artisan Parfumeur. Anyone heard of them? They're not very accessible here in the UK, but they have bottles that look a bit like this. They're black now, but this is what they used to look like. And L'Artisan Parfumeur is often seen as one of the first niche brands. And it started out in the 1970s, and it has a really cool story. The guy that started it, I believe, was a chemist by trade, and he was invited to a party, or his friend was invited to a party, and they were wearing a banana costume, and they wanted a fragrance that smelled like banana, so that they could go and be like, wow, look at me, I'm dressed as a banana, but I also smell like a banana, which, by the way, I think is really cool. I would do that. Totally would do that. Anybody who wants to dress up like a banana and spray a perfume on that smells like a banana is a friend to me. So that's what he did, and he then kind of found that there was this real niche audience who wanted fragrances that didn't smell like everything else, that didn't necessarily fit the brief for everybody else, that were things that were slightly weird, slightly unique, that kind of challenged what perfume can be. And that's where it came from. So L'Artisan Parfumeur was one of the very, very first. And ever since that, they've kind of really evolved. So it's evolved from brands that make what they want in smaller batches without focus groups to something else. And I always say with mainstream fragrances are great. Some of the biggest classics of fragrances you can buy, the Chanel No. 5s, the Shalimars, the Dior Poisons, all of those things, they're from mainstream brands, right? So they are all great fragrances, and you get wonderful fragrances in mainstream. The difference is, in mainstream, when you're a big brand, such as one of the big fashion houses, when you're creating a fragrance, you are looking to make a return on your investment, aren't you? It's a commercial product. It's very often the accessible entry point for a brand. You know, we may not all be able to afford a Chanel bag, but many of us could go and buy or save up for a Chanel perfume. So it's always the kind of the entry point. And because of that, it needs to be something that lots of people are going to like. And so they pump lots of money into their bottles, into their marketing. They focus group fragrances so that they can make sure that people like them, changing them based on what people like. And sometimes that leads to really interesting fragrances, and sometimes that leads to fragrances that are a bit bland. And I always say the most interesting fragrances are the ones that are divisive. So if you think of fragrances like Angel by Mugler, you're either going to love or hate that fragrance. You don't kind of fall in the middle and think, meh, it's okay. Not many people think that. And that's a sign of a good fragrance, I think, because it's distinct, it's different, it brings something new. So you do get great stuff in the mainstream, but I think sometimes the structures of mainstream mean that actually the artisanal freedom is not there. So it's difficult for brands to go out and make something new, unique, challenging. So that's where kind of niche came from. It filled that gap. You know, in the 70s, the big fragrances that were out there were from the big brands like Lauder and Dior and Chanel and YSL. So they noticed that there were people that wanted something a bit more. So niche has evolved so much since then. So if you think about that, we had L'Artisan Parfumeur in the 70s, we had a few small indie brands, and then really not very many things, I would say, until the sort of 90s and noughties, when there was a niche explosion. And so niche has evolved a lot since then. I would say now there's a real overlap between what we would say is independent fragrance, luxury, and exclusive. In itself, it is more mainstream, more accessible. You can go into Selfridges or Harrods and you will find as many niche brands in there as you would... sorry if I'm going a little bit too fast. My stream of consciousness. You would find as many niche brands as you would find accessible mainstream brands on the counters there now. So it's much more accessible. You can find it online. There are now niche perfume boutiques. There are companies like Essential that stock niche fragrances alongside mainstream fragrances. So it's evolved. It's much more accessible. And what I find really fascinating is when you look at some of those mainstream brands that I mentioned, like YSL, like Dior, like Chanel, they each all have their own niche line. Chanel has Les Exclusifs, Dior has La Collection Privée, I think it's called, and then YSL has one as well. So they all are trying to get a bit of their the niche pie as well. So it's kind of come full circle where mainstream brands also have some niche elements to them, and it's elements of exclusivity. So niche is so different from what it was when it started. Look at brands like Tom Ford. There was a really good question earlier about, is Tom Ford niche or is Tom Ford mainstream? Well, I think the answer is both, because there is a mainstream collection that you can buy in all of your department stores, and then there's a more exclusive collection that's a little bit harder to find and a bit more expensive. And an interesting fact that I read the other day was that in the last decade, the number of niche brands has tripled. So it's absolutely exploded. So that leaves us in a place where we're kind of have an embarrassment of riches. There's so many niche brands out there, so much to choose from. So what is niche now? So what does that mean? So if we want to define niche, I would say it could be anything that includes any one of the following, or any combination of the following. So it could be limited distribution, so you can't get it everywhere. You can only get it in certain places. It could be fragrances that have unique artistic concepts. It could be things that are independently created, so from brands that are kind of self-owned, or perhaps are perfumer-owned and perfumer-run. Fragrances that challenge our perceptions of what perfume can be, and we certainly have some brands on Essential that do that kind of really push the boundaries of what a fragrance is. If you look at Etat Libre d'Orange, which is a brand that we have on the website, that certainly does that. It could be that they have a luxury presentation, they use luxury materials, so actually they put a lot of cost into the formula of the fragrance rather than the bottle and the marketing. They create stuff outside of marketing and focus groups, so it's kind of very, very kind of specific to what they want to do. And it could be perfumery made on a small scale. And that's what initially made things very niche was, when you're doing things on a small scale, then obviously your economies of scale aren't quite there. So things are more expensive. The one thing that I think is really important for people to remember is that niche doesn't mean better and mainstream doesn't mean worse. In the same way that expensive doesn't mean better quality, and that slightly more affordable or cheaper doesn't mean worse quality. That's why we've kind of finally curated our selection of brands so that we've got what we think are the best brands out there, because you get good and bad at all ends of the spectrum. So niche isn't necessarily better just because it's niche, and mainstream isn't just necessarily worse because it's mainstream. It's all about what resonates with you, I think. When done right, niche will give you luxurious, beautiful scents that not everyone is wearing. So I think that's kind of part of the attraction, because it gives you, we all want to have that exclusivity of wearing something that not everybody else is wearing. Totally feel that. Yes, that's absolutely right. Sophie's saying even with rare perfumes, with the internet, everything's accessible. Absolutely. And I think that must have been such a big part. Well, I absolutely know it's such a big part of the way that niche has exploded, because when those brands were coming out, and in the early noughties, you had websites like Base Notes and Fragrantica where people were sat and talking on their computers around fragrances they were finding and sending samples to each other and swapping decants and saying, you need to try this brand, you need to try that brand. And that kind of built this buzz. Then you've got all the bloggers who started from that, start talking about fragrance digitally. And I think that's really, really helped the explosion as well. We are very lucky to be able to get even the rarest perfumes. Absolutely. Are those Jasmine Awards in the background, Thomas? Yes, they are. They're 4 of my 5 Jasmine Awards. I share one with my colleague Nick, so he has that one. I thought it would be fair. I couldn't just say, well, I'm having that one because I've got those 4 there. Anyway, okay, so what I want to do, because I'm probably running a little bit behind time because I've just ranted at you for the last 11 minutes, but I'm enjoying it. I wanted just to showcase very quickly, I'm not going to smell in detail, just 3 niche brands that we have that kind of show you how niche is very, very different and varied. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about very quickly first of all, and this is in the article, if you go and read the article that's on the blog, which is all of the niche fragrances that have been picked by bloggers, etc. One of the ones is this one from Serge Lutens, which is Féminité du Bois, which kind of means feminine woods, womanly woods, woods for women. And this was what I love about Serge Lutens is it was one of the first cult niche brands. So it was very difficult to get hold of. People absolutely adored it because it was giving something really, really different to what other brands were giving. And so when this all kind of started, I think actually you have L'Artisan Parfumeur in the 70s who were one of the first niche brands, but actually one of the really cult, most popular niche brands was absolutely Serge Lutens. And his fragrances have always been very distinct, very cerebral, very, I don't know, he's a strange man. I think he's a makeup artist by trade, a photographer. He's a man of many talents. He's worked for Dior for a very long time. He has been building a house in Morocco for about 150 years that I don't think he'll ever finish. All of the fragrances are supplied with no notes. They just have very hard to kind of understand riddles that come with them. It's all very, very strange, but actually the fragrances themselves are quite unique. And actually, one of the ones I wanted to show you is not one that we have, but it just shows you about Serge Lutens, how niche these were. This is a fragrance called Tuberose Criminal. It comes in a bell, this little bell jar. These were only available previously in one shop in Paris that you had to go to if you wanted to buy or try the fragrance. So that's like the very, very definition of niche. And you'd have to go in there and kind of try and navigate the interesting social cues of kind of uptight sales assistants who speak French, etc., which is always an experience. I always found it very daunting going in there. But that's just so niche. And these were kind of some of the first fragrances that I saw when I started reading about niche fragrance online. And Serge Lutens is just kind of, a fascinating brand. This one, Tuberose Criminal, is a wonderful hot white floral, very kind of like rubbery tuberose, but it has a massive camphor wintergreen element, so it's incredibly medicinal. It has materials that are called salicylates that are really pushed up in this fragrance to give it this really kind of whoosh of wintergreen, of kind of Vicks Vapor Rub, fascinating, strange, dangerous, deadly, etc., etc. So that was one of the very, very, very first niche brands. Karen, I think you would find this quite an experience. It's an experience. It's to be experienced, if you love it. Would I consider oud fairly niche? No, I wouldn't say oud is fairly niche. I think oud is pretty much a fragrance category on its own. I think it should be its own fragrance family. But I wouldn't say it's niche. It's too prevalent. It's in so many different fragrances now, right even down into celebrity fragrances. So, is Iris Silver Mist one of his? Absolutely. Iris Silver Mist is one of Serge Lutens. And again, it's a very challenging fragrance. It's a fragrance that celebrates the harsher elements of iris, the very turnipy, carroty, earthy, mineral, vegetal characteristics of iris. So that's what made Serge Lutens quite a fascinating niche brand, because he was doing stuff no one else was doing, and people were having that moment of smelling his fragrances going, I've not smelled this before. Should I even smell like this? Should this be a perfume that I wear? And that's what's quite exciting about that niche brand in particular. Next one I want to talk to you about is another one that we stopped. It's very, very, very different. And I would say this is a bit more of an accessible niche brand, because it's one that talks about just beautiful materials, wonderful compositions, and storytelling. And this is Miller Harris. This is one of my favourite brands. I've got tons of Miller Harris behind me, which you can see out there, because I just really love them. They're very easy to wear, but also really beautiful. And these are two fragrances that I do. This one is L'air de Rien, which is the Air of Nothing, which is a fragrance they did in conjunction with Jane Birkin, and it's inspired by her memories, and it's kind of this very animalic vanilla amber. It's a very, very strange fragrance. To me, it's always smelled like you've walked into a room of somebody who's no longer, and you're kind of getting the spirit or the sense of somebody who's no longer there. It's very much the absence of a person rather than the smell of a person. So that's Miller Harris. I'll just show you that. And so they do really wonderful stories in their fragrances, and I feel like when you're wearing a Miller Harris scent, you're really kind of experiencing a moment or an emotion, and they're really, really good at conveying that. And their concepts are really strong. This one, which is called Tender, is inspired by the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel Tender as the Night. And there are two fragrances actually in this collection, which is Scherzo and Tender. And those two fragrances, they essentially gave the same paragraph of text to two perfumers and said, go and make us a perfume that smells like this. And they, both perfumers, one was Bertrand Duchefort, who did this, and the other one was Mathieu Nardin, who did the other one. And they both created completely different fragrances. And that's what's absolutely fascinating about interpretation and showing how we can link fragrance into literature and other art forms, and how we all experience it so, so different. And that's what I like about Miller Harris. It's accessible. Nothing is too weird or too strange. You're not going to get, Vicks Vapor Rub tuberose as you would with some Serge Lutens fragrances, but you do get really beautifully well thought out fragrances that have a story behind them. The last brand I'm going to tell you about is one that I think that showcases pushing the boundaries of in fragrance in terms of niche, but also this kind of opulence of utter luxury. And that is a brand which is called Amwaj. I don't know if you know Amwaj. This was the first fragrance from Amwaj. It launched in 1983, and Amwaj comes from Oman and was commissioned by the Sultan of Oman. He said he basically wanted to make fragrances for the royal family, and there were two fragrances, Gold Woman and Gold Man. And they worked with a perfumer, a very famous French perfumer called Guy Robert, and he was kind of given a no budget, just go make a beautiful fragrance. You can spend what you like on materials. And this is Gold Woman, and this is the one that I've picked in the article that's my favourite niche fragrance, because it's one of my first niche fragrances, and one of the ones that kind of really blew my mind in terms of what luxury fragrance can be. It's a beautiful bottle. The bottles are inspired by, for the women's ones, I think it's the dome of a mosque in Oman. And also for the men's fragrances, I believe there is kind of a ceremonial knife or spear or weapon that is that men in Oman carry or can carry on ceremonial events, and that's inspired by that. So again, really like beautiful kind of storytelling behind it. And Gold Woman, I absolutely love this. If you like number 5, I would say this is number 5 on steroids. It's literally bigger, richer. It's very 80s. It's kind of this wonderful white floral with this real beautiful shimmer and sparkle of aldehydes, that kind of fizziness that gives number 5 its fizziness. But there's this richness to this fragrance and this like beautiful silvery spine of frankincense, which is kind of one of the native materials in Oman. And it's just resplendent. I spray it and I feel like I am just dripping in gold. I'm not, obviously. I'm just wearing a top man jumper. But we can all dream, can't we? We can all dream. Beautiful. What does the Amwaj cost? I think a 50ml is expensive. It's no cost, no object in the budget of making this. I think it's about 190 pounds for the 50ml. It's so strong though, I think it would last you a decade. And they've kind of since gone and moved on from being that very luxury, opulent brand to being someone that challenges. So there's a fragrance here called Interlude Man, which is really, really kind of a cult product that smells. It's like a leather fragrance that smells like how do I describe it? So it's leather, so it's smoky, it's woody, so it's got kind of like a tarriness. And then there's like this vanilla note to it. It's also quite powdery because there's like an iris facet. To me, it smells like if you made a bonfire out of vanilla, this is what this would smell like, which is unusual for a fragrance. And there's also this one called Imitation Woman, which is inspired by the 70s and Studio 54, and it's kind of all aldehydes, hairspray, and cassis, which is this really like tart, fruity, but also quite hissy material. It's a lot of fun. So Amwaj kind of really pushes the boundaries, but also does things in a really, really luxurious way. Brilliant. I love that. So that's just kind of an overview of some fragrances that we have that kind of give an example of how niche can be very, very different. It doesn't necessarily always have to be weird and strange and challenging. It can be like Mil Harris. It can be beautiful, telling a story, great materials, and just kind of wonderful, easy fragrances to wear. But it can also be quite like Serge Lutens. It can challenge, and it could also be like Amwaj, be very luxurious, very opulent. There are different spectrums, and you have lots of different price points within niche as well. I'm just going to scroll back through to see if I've missed anything. Lots of love for the Amwaj in the bottle. Have I met any of the actual perfumers, not reps on the brands? Yes, I'm very lucky to have met a number of perfumers in my life and been able to interview them. They're always very interesting folk. Okay, so what I will say just before I move on, our niche hub is live. You can go visit that on the website to see all of our niche brands and content. I'm sure we'll do links and things at the end so you don't know where that is. Is Miller Harris UK based? Yes, they are a UK brand. They were started by Lynn Harris, I think in the early noughties, and she's since sold the brand and moved on. Bonfire of Vanilla sounds pretty incredible. It is. This is the sexiest bonfire you'll ever visit. It's very good. It's very strong though, so just don't overspray it, because someone will call the fireman, or maybe do spray it lots. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to move on now. So I am going to be inviting Maria from Greek Goddess London to join me. Is Maria here? Maria, are you there? Hello, Maria. If you are here, Maria, I wonder if I can invite you myself. I think I can. Let me try. There we go. I've sent you. I'm just waiting for Maria. Here she is. Hi, Maria. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Okay, let
That
me sort up. Give me a
that all
second.
happened a lot more efficiently and quicker than I expected it to.
Yes! That was really efficient. That was
Yeah,
really...
I thought I would have to fill some dead air for a moment there, which is not my specialty. But I'm glad. It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
I know, hasn't it? I miss
Yes,
everybody. I miss you. I miss
I
everybody.
know. I miss you too. So for those watching, I know Maria because we are always bumping into. Well, we were always bumping into each other at perfume launches in what I call the before times, before the world kind of started crashing down and COVID ruined everything. So we were always bumping into each other and having lovely chats about perfume. Maria, you are a perfume nerd, much like me.
Yes.
What I would like to know is how did you get into perfume? What sparked your interest?
Scent. Well, how does anybody start? Scent is so important in any way for everybody, and it's just kind of going around the shops and smelling things. And when you started talking about Serge Lutens, actually, that was one of the first brands I actually had a chance to try in the niche department, because way back then I was living in Greece. They sold the Serge Lutens with the Shiseido products.
Oh yeah.
Everything was together, and you could
Mm.
actually get that. That was one of the very, very few things, and it just kind of struck me how different a perfume was, in contradiction to anything else. Well, my first perfume was Lulu by Cacharel. Uh, it was like I went loud. It was Fiji, and it was all this loud madness, which is why I do love the big white florals and fragrances that do make a statement and kind of thing. But yeah, it was just kind of curiosity, and the way that scent triggers memories, and it triggers anything, and you kind of connect it with things and situations and life, really. So you can always come back to it, and it has that comforting kind of memory um, to it that I just find it irresistible. And then it became a collection. It became, yeah, I went down the rabbit hole very,
Yeah.
very badly, and it
Yeah.
just was stopping. Yeah.
Yeah. You tend to fall down the rabbit hole with your wallet tumbling not far behind you, I find. What was coming across Surgery Tens as the first kind of niche brand? Did you kind of feel that you were smelling something different from what you would normally been wearing? Did it feel different to you at the time?
It did feel different because not everything else, there wasn't that much available way back then, to be honest, but it did feel different in terms of composition. And then when I started researching things, like you said, it was the stories. It was more than just an ad on TV. It was an elaborate story that explained why, how, when, and all of those things that you wouldn't get necessarily with the mainstream brands.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really exciting about some niche brands is that they are giving you a kind of fully formed concept that is something that you've kind of not experienced in fragrance before.
Yes, exactly. Because this is the whole thing, that this is, I think, the most important thing with niche perfumery. What separates it now is the story behind it, the inspiration, and of course the raw materials that you're going to use to express that. But I think because everybody's dipping their toes in the niche territory, even the bigger brands, I think the storytelling is what's going to make the difference in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit that resonates with people. I mean, notes and things can be quite abstract concepts for a lot of people. A lot of materials that we see written in press releases don't necessarily make sense because they're not things we experience in everyday life. But a good story is something that people will always remember. So you were asked as part of our article, because obviously you are a blogger, you write about beauty and write about fragrance. You asked to kind of contribute to our article on the blog around your favorite niche fragrance. And there is this wonderful line in your article where you said that you described this fragrance as having a film noir quality to it, which I
Yeah.
loved. Can you tell me about the fragrance you picked as your favorite?
So yes, it did manage to arrive on time.
Yay!
Yay! It's Oil Fiction from Juliet Has a Gun.
Okay.
Juliet Has a Gun is a brand that's been around quite a long time, really, now, and they have quite a few interesting things, I think, Vanilla Vibes is one of my other favorites as well. And they have like weird stories and weird concepts behind everything. But the luxury collection, actually, I don't think has received that much attention. It's not really widely available and talked about. So one of the fragrances I tried some time ago was Oil Fiction, and what drew to me is that I do love tuberose. So it has that bang on, as soon as you spray it, you get it. But then it kind of feels like a film noir in the sense that it kind of, I don't know, it has that animalic quality that makes you kind of think twice. And if you watch those film noir movies with the mystery and the curtains moving and people jumping in and out in situations, it kind of reminded me of this kind of era, like smoky rooms and bars, and I think 50s kind of hangouts, that kind of thing. So, and the fact that it does stay on the skin for quite a long. I just loved it. And it's one of the few things that, one of the few fragrances that, like I said, I don't say what it is when I wear it.
Because you don't want people to know.
Well, yeah, because usually I'm an oversharer. It's like, yes, I'm wearing this, and you know they have this as well, and they do this and blah blah blah. But in this occasion, it's just kind of a bit more of a, just to add to the mystery, I guess. Yeah.
I think if you ever, my tip is if you ever really want to be really snobbish or kind of throw someone off the scent of your perfume when they ask what it is, you just have to go, oh, you wouldn't know it, you know. Oh, you wouldn't know it, you know. And I think that gives you an air of mystery. I love that film noir kind of reference, because to me that fragrance, it's kind of a very warm tuberose. It's quite resinous, and it all, like the word oil in it is so specific because it does feel kind of oily.
It does feel sticky, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And you get the impression of, you know, it is very black and white movie, 1950s, starlet sat at the bar smoking a very long cigarette and drinking, you know, a whiskey. It's kind of very, it's very that. And I love that about Juliet Has a Gun, is that they are such a rebellious brand. They created this idea that it's about empowerment, it's about, you know, women, you know, these stories of women who are kind of a little bit dangerous and exciting, but it's also quite an accessible brand. I think, you know, as in terms of price point and in terms of how strange the fragrances are, it's actually quite an easy one to enjoy and to like. But the luxury collection you're talking about does still very much feel like a hidden gem.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is a hidden gem. I think all of the luxury ones are hidden gems. What's the other one? Liquid Illusion. I think that's another masterpiece. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And there's Moon Dance, which to me smells a bit like a kind of modern Dior Poison.
Yes, I haven't smelled this in a long time, but now that you mention it, it does have that vibe, doesn't it? Yeah, that big, loud, explosion of everything.
And I think Juliet Has a Gun is, if you're watching and you're kind of wanting to get into niche fragrances and you're worried about finding something that would be too strange for you or is too expensive, I think Juliet Has a Gun is a really good starting point. Their fragrances do lean a little bit feminine, I would say. If you're worried about that, if you're not, and you're quite happy wearing the very vampy, powdery Lady Vengeance like I am, then don't worry about it too much. But I do feel that they are a little bit more feminine. But they're fun concepts. They're kind of a decent price point. Great materials, fun twists, and kind of very rebellious. I think it's a good place to start.
It is a good place to start because, like you say, they do have a very good price point as well, because some brands do get a bit overboard. Not saying that they're not worth it, but for some, I think this is a main point for a lot of people wanting to buy something different, is actually stopping them. And this kind of way, trying to, you know, how do you start? Where do you start? This is kind of a difficult decision, but this is a very good place because it's nothing too extravagant, and also it's different. So you kind of stand out as well. So it kind of combines everything.
Yeah, it gives you a bit of everything. So, one final question before I let you go. So, thank you very much for joining me, firstly. But
Thank you very
when
much.
you are looking for a niche fragrance, what are the kind of characteristics that you look for when you're going to go and spend a little bit more and treat yourself to something a bit fancier? What is it that you're looking for?
Well, I do have favorite perfumers. So in many occasions I will go to a creation that they've made. So I would kind of follow the trail of the perfumer into different houses. Because the good thing now is that they all do different work for different perfume houses, which does carry sort of like a signature, but they do of course follow the script and the inspiration of the brand. So I kind of do have like a few that I follow and always try to smell the new things that they create. And also, like I said, the story. I think it's quite important. And I do enjoy, like you mentioned before, a lot of perfumers that are creating their own brands. And they have a very, very specific idea of how they want them to be because they've worked so many years in the industry and they want to create something that expresses them completely and, well, hopefully inspires the same way the people that are buying their fragrances.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that's the thing that sells me as well. I mean, we're all a bit like kind of perfumer groupies, aren't we? We follow them around everywhere, wearing little t-shirts with Francis Coach on them, like little
Oh,
geeks.
God.
We don't really do that, but we would if we could. If someone makes us a Francis Coach on
Actually,
t-shirt,
yeah, why not?
we
Yeah.
would wear it. In the comments, someone said they feel like if a perfume they like gets popular, they then transition to another. I think we've got. Have you ever been in that situation?
No, but I've had a lot of questions from friends saying, "Oh, what is new? What is exciting? What other people are not wearing?" It's like, and sometimes my suggestions are like really classic, and people say, "Oh, isn't this old?" It's like, but sometimes, old is not necessarily bad because some people think that it's not in fashion anymore, so you're not going to get a lot of people smelling like that. So you would be the novelty, really
Yeah,
wearing something old.
absolutely. Yeah, so I think that's the thing. Now you've got so many from the past that you can kind of go back into that aren't as popular, that you can still feel quite individual wearing those. Brilliant. Well, thanks, Maria. This was lovely chatting to you, albeit briefly. I do hope we will bump into each other again soon when the world opens up again.
Yes, hopefully soon enough.
Yes,
But
hopefully.
the digital is not too bad anyway. It was very, very good seeing you. Thank you for the
And
invite.
you, no, thank you for coming and thank you for contributing to the article. It was lovely to read why you love I want to say oil fiction so much.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria. That was really lovely. That was great. It's nice seeing a friend that I haven't seen for a long while. Joel says, it might be for another live. Thomas, have you ever had a custom fragrance made for you? No, I haven't. Bespoke fragrances are very, very expensive. It depends who you get to do it. But I mean, if you want, I think, Francis Cajon to create you a fragrance, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of pounds. That's a lot. I think, as you can see, I have enough fragrance to last me several lifetimes without getting a bespoke one. Also, I would not know what I wanted. I really wouldn't. I would be an absolute nightmare if I had to pick and work with a perfumer because I'd want a bit of everything and I would never be happy with it because I'm not very good at choosing things. So the answer to that is no, I'm probably not. Right. So next we have got Sophie from Soki London who's joining us. Sophie, I believe, is there. Maybe one day, maybe if I get really, really, really rich, I'll do it. And then I can come and do a live for it. But I don't think until then. Let me see if I can see if Sophie is there. We can get Sophie to come on and talk about her favourite niche fragrance. There she is. Apply to Dragon's Den for funding. I think that's a very good idea. Now, can you imagine the pitch? It would just be, I just want a very expensive fragrance. Please, can you give me the money? Hello, hi.
Hi, how are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
So, unlike me and Maria, you and I have not met before. This is our first time chatting.
No, I know. Nice to meet you.
And you, thanks for joining us. And thank you for writing about your niche fragrance in our article. It was lovely to read
Yeah.
what you've written about. And I've had a good old scroll through your Instagram feed earlier today. And you really, really love Perfume.
I do love Perfume. Yeah, yeah. Past couple of years I've been doing my YouTube and everything, and I'm just a perfume geek like you guys. But I think I'm probably a bit more boring with my choices than you are.
No, I'm sure that's not true. What was it? Well, two questions, I suppose. What got you into perfume, and then what got you into kind of doing your perfume reviews?
Yeah, so I had a job maybe about 10 years ago now in a perfume shop, when I was a student, and it was a niche kind of perfume shop. It sold the niche ones and it sold all the designer ones, like an independent shop. And I just kind of got really into it, learned everything about it. I worked there like 6-7 days a week, and by the time I left after like a year, I knew every perfume, every size, the price of every size, and the reps would come and show us the new releases. Sometimes I got to go on little trainings as well that the different brands would have, and I just got super into it, and then it carried on from there really. So I just always stay up to date on new things, and yeah, it's amazing how time's passed since then, but still like the same fragrances are still popular.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of it's a really fascinating thing to see that you kind of opened your eyes to perfume in such a kind of an expansive way with so many different fragrances. Can you remember what your like first niche fragrance was, or first niche brand that you really loved?
So I remember the Serge Luton actually was very popular. People would come in asking for it, and I was like, I don't know what that is. So I quickly got up to speed on that. I remember that was really popular, but I think my first love for niche was Van Cleef and Arpels, their Fairy range that's discontinued because of the bottles. I've always loved fairies, even like as a child and everything. So I gravitated towards those bottles, and I think it's so sad those ones are discontinued now, but they smelt just like sort of ivy and woodland, and like how I would imagine a fairy's house would smell like or something. So I think that was it, and I couldn't believe that they weren't more well known and well popular because they were so cool.
Yeah, and they had like really elaborate bottles, didn't they, with kind of silver, like it's a fairy sitting on like a branch, wasn't it?
Yeah, like a big metal, like their jewelry, which is crazy expensive. So it's like you could have a piece of their jewelry.
Yeah.
Plus the perfume. Yeah.
And actually, the fragrance that you picked for us as one of your favourites is also Van Cleef and Arpels, and this is from their collection extraordinaire, and this is Rose Rouge. Tell us a bit about this and why you love it.
Yeah, so they now have this collection extraordinaire where they all come in these bottles that look like this. So that's my only criticism, that they're not fancy fairy bottles. They're like boring rectangle bottles. But this one, Rose Rouge, it reminds me a lot of one of my favorite perfumes, Mon Paris from YSL. It's all about the blackcurrant, rose, raspberry, and I think when it comes to niche, there's not many perfumes that major on those fruity currant notes, those like winterberry notes. They tend to be more something that's in like mainstream perfumes, but often like not very strong. So I think it's cool that here like they're majoring on those that blackcurrant notes, but they're like really strong and comforting. I've been wearing it today actually because obviously I knew this was coming up, and all day I've just had this really comforting vibe, and it's quite cold today, so I just found it like fruity but really warm, kind of like a hot fruit drink or something at Christmas.
Yeah, that's a lovely description, and I think it's a really fascinating point that you've made about the types of notes in this and how they're not normally niche, because that fragrance is quite a gourmand rose, because it's very fruity rose but also a little bit chocolatey and sort of warm. And I think gourmand fragrances, when we think of gourmand, we kind of think of Britney Spears Fantasy and fragrances that are kind of at the lower end of the spectrum. And it's really fascinating to see that actually when niche brands try and make that very luxury, which they've managed to do with this one, because I think you described it as being very decadent. I think that's such a good description.
Yeah, I can imagine anything that has a name like Rouge in it. I always think of Moulin Rouge and like what Satine would wear or something. And I think it is like that. Like it's a bit like Hypnotic Poison. Like it makes you feel a bit heady almost. So I think it has that kind of nighttime, mysterious vibe as well, like you say with the gourmand, while still like getting the fruit and not being too, you know, intensely sweet or anything.
Yeah, it's a really lovely brand and a really good example of kind of a more mainstream brand going and exploring the niche things with their collection, because it's not available everywhere. It's really exceptional quality, and the fragrances are so beautiful and so varied. Do you enjoy any of the others from that collection at all? Do you know any of those? Or?
Yeah, they have a new Rolly one, which I really like, I think.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I think that it's nice. Like when they came out, I was concerned that they might all be like a lot of the niches, like lots of ouds or leathers or like aldehydes you guys were discussing. But they haven't gone with that, which I like. They still have somewhat lighter ones, which I think is nice, and sort of those white floral ones, as well as having the heavier ones as well. I think they have an oud one, which is actually really affordable for like the strength of the oud as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Compared to, you know, sometimes you can be paying a small fortune for oud. I think they have quite an affordable one as well.
Yeah, they're definitely more accessible, and there's lots of love for them in the comments. People talking about they love the gardenia, precious oud. Chelsea says she loves Moonlight Patchouli. I love Moonlight Patchouli. It's kind of a really gorgeous patchouli rose. It's a wonderful, wonderful brand.
I love the name Moonlight.
Yeah, I know. They've got lovely names, actually. They had one, I don't know if they still do it, but it was called California Reverie. And it was kind of meant to be the scent of like jasmine flowers on the breeze. And it was just like a really beautiful, kind of vivid kind of name and fragrance. Brilliant. So it was lovely talking to you. Thanks so much for joining me briefly. It was lovely to meet you. And now I'm really excited because I'm going to have to go out and try Rose Rouge again, because it's been a long time since. And thanks very much for contributing to our article on the blog, and everybody can go over and read that and read about your love for Rose Rouge there.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. See you later. Okay, so just jumping back into the comments then, because there's lots of different comments that we've got. There we go. That I might have missed. Lots of love for Van Cleef and Arpels, which is interesting because to me, I would have thought it was a little bit of a hidden gem, but it seems that lots of people really, really love that brand, which is great. I love Moonlight Patchouli as well, Chelsea. That's so gorgeous. I'm just seeing if I missed anything. We talked about mulled wine. Does anyone spray their mask? I haven't really been spraying my mask, but that's actually quite a good idea. More love Ombre Imperial. Thank you, Sophie. Yes, thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much for joining. It was lovely to meet you and to talk to you. I love talking to people who are passionate about fragrance and enjoy it very much, and it was lovely to do that. Okay, I'm just checking what was on my list next. It's questions next. I have a series of questions that were submitted at the beginning, so I'm going to jump into those. But of course, if you've got further questions, then just ask me, and I'll answer them as we go. Now, if I press the questions button, I should be able to do a question. Aha! That was brilliant. That's very exciting. I'm very handsome, apparently. Brilliant. I love it. Flatter me as much as you like, people. I'm all for that. Thank you very much. Is there a niche fragrance you have wanted to try but haven't yet? Absolutely. Going back to Amwaj, I'm a big Amwaj fanboy. They changed this is how geeky I am. They changed their creative director in the last sort of year, 2 years. And they've launched 4 new fragrances that are very, very different in terms of style. And I want to try those. So I'm going to go and try those at some point when the world opens up again, which I know I've moaned about a lot this evening, but it's very annoying. So that's one that I would like to try, is the new stuff from Amwaj. They've got lovely names like Assure, Enclave, Crimson Rocks, I think. Beautiful, beautiful names. We love you, Thomas. I love you too. Thank you so much. Right, I think I have to do this with another question. Right. Okay, we're back with Lisa. Favorite niche or fragrance? Favorite niche, fragrance, or brand? Oh, that's a question. Well, I would say if I were to look behind me, I would say I probably have more L'Artisan Parfumeur than anything else in terms of niche. I would think. Yeah, I would probably say L'Artisan Parfumeur. I'm just looking at my shelf. Sorry for giving you a view of the back of my head. But probably L'Artisan Parfumeur. There's so many wonderful niche classics in that line. Are niche fragrances better than designer? Not necessarily. I think that's a really good question, because actually it all comes down to what the fragrance is trying to say. What are the materials? Does it do something new? Is it novel? Is it beautiful? There's so many different factors, and I think you can buy some really terrible niche fragrances you can buy some fantastic designer fragrances and vice versa. So I think there's just good and bad in both. That's what I would say. Okay, does niche mean expensive? Not always. I think if something is placed as niche, because it is normally made on a smaller scale, it is going to be more expensive usually. But we talked about Juliet Has a Gun with Maria earlier, and I think you can get bottles of those for under £100. So those are, it doesn't necessarily mean expensive, but obviously you have to caveat that with, we all have a different understanding of what expensive is. And, you know, there are people who would classify, you know, a £500 fragrance is relatively affordable, and people who would say that, you know, spending £30-40 is expensive. So I think it's kind of, there's that caveat to it. A question for Thomas and the Essential team: does a niche fragrance hinder sales because people haven't heard of them? No, I don't think so. I think it depends on the brand. I think there is a following for niche. I think people are much more into fragrance than they used to be. If you look at brands like Frederic Malle and how popular that brand is, you know, that is a cult fragrance brand that even if people you know, don't know all of the fragrances or can only afford to buy one fragrance from that line, they are willing to spend the money. And I think there was data, and maybe Chelsea or Karen can back me up on this. I'm sure there was data around people are willing to spend more on one signature fragrance than buying lots and lots of different fragrances. So I think it doesn't necessarily mean it's good. What is your all-time favorite niche fragrance? Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I'm going to say gold. Let's go for Gold Woman, because that's the one I picked for my article. What's the most popular niche fragrance on Essential? That's a really good question, Sophie. I'm hoping that Karen and Chelsea can answer that on my behalf. Do niche fragrances have to have complex ingredients and formulas to be classified as niche? No, they don't have to. I think it's not really about the formula itself. It used to be about the distribution. So how easily accessible were those brands? So it's nothing to do with the formula. And also remember, formulas are not public things. So it would be really difficult to kind of, to kind of judge that, because perfumers and brands are very, very secretive of their formulas. Okay, so in answer to that question, at the moment, the most popular niche fragrance is Delina by Parfums du Mali. Gorgeous fragrance. It's if you've not tried it, it's a wonderful rose. It's a very modern rose. I would say it's kind of, it's a fruity rose, jammy, sweet, but also a little bit milky. It's a very strange fragrance. It reminds me a little bit of, if you describe it as a color, it would be the color of strawberry Nesquik. That's a really strange answer to a question, but that's how I see it in my head. Okay, Thomas, exclamation mark. Why is niche fragrance so expensive? That is a very good question. I think it depends on a number of factors. I think if you're doing things on a smaller scale, then the amount of bottles you can buy and the price that you buy them at, and the compound that you buy, which is the fragrance oil, and the amount that you buy will determine the price. If you buy more bottles, if you buy more fragrance oil, you will get economy of scale in that, and it will be cheaper as you go. You know, the difference between buying 5 kilos and 10 tons is going to be massive. You also obviously don't have the infrastructure of existing brands. So if you look at a brand like Estee Lauder, they have so many different brands. They've got warehousing, they've got marketing, they've got HR, they've got everything. So they're able to just do all of that, and it's obviously not as expensive for them. I think also they often tend to use more expensive materials where they can, but that's not a given. There's lots of different factors. I think sometimes there is also this idea of exclusivity, and that if you price it higher, people will want it more because it's this perceived idea of luxury. There is a brand that I shall not name, but that was in Harrods, for example, that was not selling very well, and they doubled the price and it sold much, much better, because people were like, well, if it's really expensive, it must be better. So I think there's so many different things that go in there into that. If you were a niche fragrance, what would you be? That's a very good question. I would like to think I'm very much a Juliet Has a Gun, Lady Vengeance, you know, dressed in black velvet with, I don't know, a killer stare. Maybe that would be me. Probably not me. I'd probably just be Amwaj Gold sat on my sofa in my pajamas. What's my favourite niche fragrance? We've already answered that one. What's the difference between a niche fragrance and a fashion fragrance? Well, a fashion fragrance would be coming from a fashion house, so Chanel, from Dior, etc. And a niche fragrance is one from a smaller brand that has limited distribution, is more exclusive. These are really good questions, by the way, really good. Do niche perfumes have a longer expiry date if stored correctly? No, I would say there's absolutely no difference. There's no difference in that at all. They are often using the same style of materials and same perfumer's palette, so I would say no. But always store them away from heat and light. My blind is always shut in here, just to let you know, because mine are on display. Parfums de Marly being a niche brand, which is the best smelling from the line? I would say Delina is the favourite that I've tried. I've not tried one that I love more than that. I think it's lovely, and I think it's really unique. And it's created by a perfumer called Quentin Biche, who has done some really cool fragrances for brands like Interlude Man, Jean Paul Gaultier. He's kind of like the next really big mainstream perfumer who is now kind of branching out into niche and doing exciting things. Thomas, is a controversial topic. How true is what Jeremy Fragrance says on his videos on production cost? I'm not talking about He Who Should Not Be Named, so we'll move on from that. Are niche fragrances better than designer? I've kind of covered this earlier. It's a good question. I think it really depends. It could be there are some niche fragrances that are better than designer fragrances, but are there absolutely niche designer fragrances that are better than some niche ones? Yes. Okay, there's loads of questions. This is great. So how do you define what is niche? Is Tom Ford, for example, a high-end designer or niche? This was a question that came up right at the very beginning, and I think it may have been the same person who asked it earlier. So I'm going to answer it again anyway, just in case you missed it when we joined. That's fine. It's a good question to ask, and I think it's really interesting. Tom Ford started out as quite niche because he had the private blend line. You could only get it in certain places. I would say that really now Tom Ford's not very niche because I live in Milton Keynes and we can get Tom Ford Private Blend in John Lewis. To me, that doesn't feel very niche. They're good fragrances though. This is one that Sophie might like. Can you remake Me Theory by Van Cleef & Arpels? We would love to. We do not have the power, authority, or anything else that we need to do. We don't have the formula. We don't have the permission from the brand. But if we could, we absolutely would. We would do it. What are you most excited by that you come across least? That's a really interesting question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that because it's very open-ended. What do I not come across that I would like to see more? I would like to see more, this is actually my answer, I would like to see more sustainability. I think if you are a luxury product, you don't necessarily have to exist. And therefore, I think niche brands should start to, well, all perfume brands should start to think about sustainability. I think a lot of them are thinking about it in terms of their materials, so in the materials that they are using. And I think that is being pushed by the big fragrance houses. So the big companies like IFF, Givaudan, Firmenich, who actually, for the most part, will be the people who make the fragrances and supply the fragrance. They are pushing that, I think, because they have to, because they need to make sure they've got, material accessible. I think one of the biggest things that brands need to think about is packaging. I think that there is a lot of waste in packaging that doesn't need to be there. I think brands are cottoning onto it. I think, being a little bit cynical, I think a lot of them are doing it because it's a buzzword. But I think there should be more pressure on them to do that, because you sometimes get stuff that comes in very elaborate, beautiful boxes. And I love lovely packaging. I think if I'm spending £200 on a fragrance, I want it to come in a nice box. I want it to come with a nice bottle. But, really doesn't need to come, wrapped in plastic and in boxes that I can't recycle. I think there needs to be innovation in that aspect. And I think that's something I'd like to see more of. Thank you for that question. That's a really good question. I'm going to just skip over some. Sorry if I miss some of yours, it's because they're kind of replicating ones that we've already asked. This is one from Christian. Hello, Christian. What is one standout fragrance that came out in 2020? Oh, there are so many. I did actually a blog. If you go to my blog, thecandyperfumeboy.com, you should be able to find my Candies 2020, which is my winners of the best perfumes of the year. From one that we have on Essential that I really enjoyed was the new La Le Parfum. It's not a niche fragrance, but I really enjoyed that fragrance. It was a kind of modern reworking of Le Mal, and I think it was a really, really great kind of great modernization of that kind of barbershop-y fougere accord. It smells like Le Mal, but it also smells a bit more mature. It's like Le Mal's kind of the naughty sailor below deck, and Le Mal Le Parfum's he is the captain of the ship. I love that fragrance. And also, we talked about this on my podcast called Fume Chat, about how over the years we have a sneaking suspicion that Le Mal's butt has got bigger. He's been down the gym. I don't remember him being having all that much cake in the back. Do any fragrance houses have their own manufacturing? Yes, some absolutely will do. But for the most part, fragrances, they will use perfumers from the big houses to create, who then supply them with the compound. They may then manufacture that into fragrance themselves. Refillable packaging is starting to be a trend. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not new. Mugler did it in the 1990s with Angel, but I'm seeing more brands do it. And I think we need to think about how do we think about not just refilling, but also recycling as well. Let's moving on. This is from George. Hello, George. Is there any niche brand with a mass market price range? Excuse me, frog in my throat. That's a good question. I would say Juliet Has a Gun probably overlaps with brands like Dior, I think, in terms of price. I think Chelsea or Karen can correct me, but I think, if you're buying a 100 ml of a Dior fragrance, it's not going to be that far away from a 100 ml of Juliet Has a Gun. So I think that's relatively there in that price point. I'd say Comme des Garçons feels incredibly niche to me. I think it's just a niche approach and style that's not very mainstream at all. Let's move on. What's my favorite niche fragrance? We've covered that. What are the best niche incense fragrances? I would say Amwaj do some lovely things with incense. You wouldn't probably smell them and think, oh, incense. They're kind of wrapped up in there. Their gold fragrances have got incense in them. I think Comme des Garçons, if you go for Two Man, I think that is one of the best incense fragrances ever made. They also have an incense series. What niche fragrance would you recommend to someone who hasn't tried them before? I would probably not specifically a fragrance, but I would direct them to a brand. So if someone is saying, look, I want to spend a little bit more money on a perfume, I want to get something that not everybody's wearing, I want something but it's easier to wear, I would say go to Miller Harris. I'd say Miller Harris is a really good starting point because they would have fragrances that aren't weird and wacky and wonderful, but they do feel, if you've been wearing mainstream fragrances your whole life, they will feel a little bit different. Shall we do a niche box? I think we have to now, Chelsea, don't we? And I'm already in my head thinking about how opulent and wonderful that box would be. Let's do it. What's my favourite niche scent right now? Gosh. Oh, I know. It's this one. If you are on the Essential Scents group, you'll know that I included this in our January box. And it was one of our green fragrances, and I just love this. This is Wander Through the Parks by Miller Harris. It smells like stinging nettles and pavement slabs and like juicy green air and like kind of fresh grass. It's just lovely. I love it. I love it. So Wander Through the Parks. There are so many questions. I love this. What's the best way to keep up with new niche fragrance releases? I would say you can always visit our blog. We're always talking about new things on there. Read up blogs on the internet. I think Now Smell This is a really great blog to tell you what's new. Look at Instagram, YouTube. There's big communities of people who are talking about new niche fragrance. Base Notes have forums where you can talk about new niche fragrances. And last question, I think, what niche perfume would make a good Valentine's Day gift? Perfume is really my problem with perfume. Not I have a problem with it. I love perfume. One of the things that I think about as difficult with perfume is it's difficult to buy for somebody because, especially if you don't know what they're going to like. So what I would say is, I think if you can find a discovery set that gives somebody the option of trying a couple of things from a brand, maybe with the promise of, here's a discovery set. If you love one of the fragrances, I will buy it for you, or I will give you some money towards it, or whatever. I think that's a really good way to do it. Or maybe something like one of our Essential Scents boxes where they can do a blind trial of a number of samples and they can get involved in that. And I think that's a really lovely Lovely way of doing that. Chelsea saying is Anique 2 by 8 and Bob is very romantic. It's got a lovely story behind it. There's an Amwaj discovery set you can get. There's a couple of discovery sets on the website as well. So I think that's what I would suggest. Karen saying she would trust me to buy her a perfume any day. Absolutely, I would get it right. I know, because I know what you like. And if I got it wrong, I think I'd have to leave. I don't think I could ever work again. So yeah. Any other questions then while we're here? You bought the Eccentric Molecules Discovery Set for your sister-in-law for her birthday. Really lovely gift, nice brand. Lots of people here for a niche box. I'm really here for that. We're going to have to do it now. Have you tried Chrome Hearts fragrance? No, I have not. Oh, Karen's confirming that yes, Juliet has a gun and deal prices are fairly close. There we go. I think I've answered most things. Oh, sorry. I wanted to know, what niche fragrance have you always wanted to try but haven't yet? Oh, I did just answer that at the beginning. You may have missed it. I was saying I wanted to try some of the new Amwaj fragrances because they've had a new creative director who's doing some really cool, funky stuff. So I want to see what that's up to. So that's probably one that I'd like to try, maybe. Yeah, I would say that. I think we're heading to the point where we are going to announce some winners for... I don't know how to stop the questions being on the screen. Do I just press that? No, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it there. Not going to touch it. It's fine. I'm happy to answer that question again. More than happy. Right, so I'm going to announce the winners. Let's do that. If you could just imagine there is a drum roll, because there isn't. So we had a competition today where we encouraged them to send us questions, which you've done with abundance, so thank you for that. It was really fun answering those. And we were going to give away 5 bottles of the 4,160 Tuesdays Sexiest Scent on the Planet Ever, in my humble opinion. There's a lot of words in that name title. 50ml size. And then we were going to give away 5 bottles of Parfums de Marly Delina Eau de Parfum Spray 75ml. Spoiling you. Thank you, Joel. Joel has actually given us a emoji drum roll. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So, the winners of the 4,160 Tuesdays Sexiest Scent on the Planet Ever, in my humble opinion, and that is in the humble opinion of the perfumer. She said that herself. She called it that. We have Stephanie Howells. We also have Lashmoo. Then this is too far away from my face. I can't see it. We've got Beanie Bear the Yorkie. We have Rachel XXS. We have the one and only Lisa Justice. Congratulations. Then for the Parfums de Marly, just keep that drum roll going. We have We Wear Perfume. You've won. Well done. Katie Von Grimm, the KS Edit, Ryan of Spades, and then High Glowin, which is like HYE Glowin. There you go. You have won the Delina. So, congratulations. Well done. All you need to do is DM Essential for your prize. To claim that, and they will sort that out for you because they're good at doing all that kind of thing. So thank you very much to Essential for doing that. This has been an absolute pleasure. It's honestly just nice for me to talk to people. Lockdown's tough. I really enjoyed talking niche with you. I really enjoyed your questions. I really enjoyed naming the winners. That was very exciting. Please do not forget to DM Essential to sort those out and enjoy them. I can see some people who are celebrating. Congratulations if you did one. I thank you all for your questions. I really enjoyed answering them. Thank you for talking niche with me. Thank you very much for I don't know, I've run out of things to thank people for now. I don't know where that thought was going. Yes, thank you for joining. This was great. I am on Instagram, the Candy Perfume Boy. I'm more than happy to take questions there if you want to follow me and ask me questions, or just DM me to talk about perfume. I love nothing more than talking perfume with people who love perfume. So thank you for joining. It's lovely to see lots of familiar faces like Ali and Stephen and Christian and George and everybody, and Lisa and everybody that we know from the Essential Scents group. It was really, really lovely. And Rakesh and Chelsea and Karen, thank you very much for being in the comments. And biggest thank you of all, though, I must not go before I thank Maria and Sophie for joining me to have a chat about their niche fragrances. That was lovely, really enjoyable. I'm going to wish you all a very good evening, and I hope you have a lovely week. And I'm sure it won't be too long before I'm back here again rambling about perfume to you. I hope that's very, very soon. But as I say, if you need to ask us any questions, you can DM Essential, or you can obviously contact me as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you soon. Bye.